as well. So it's really kind of more of an instructional strategy and a process that comes through and within our classes than self-assessment on the report card. The report card's really more at that point for reflection, and self-assessment is something that I use on a daily basis with my students as a process for the learning. So that's really kind of where
The kids
self-assessment lives, is in the classroom. I know, Karin, you wanted to say something.
Andrew, and then right here.
I just wanted to add to the self-assessment for a question I had. So if the child, you know as your teacher, where the child stands, say they have a better potential, but the child assesses themselves and say, yeah, I kind of like that. But you know that they can do better. Would you put that in that conversation? Is that
Bet.
Yeah.
You bet.
I would really sit down with a kid and say, like, explain to me, really point out why you think this is here. Now let me tell you what I see. Like, where are we in between?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all part of the dialogue.
Do you want the microphone?
Andrew.
Yes. Sorry, I'm getting used to the mic over the last couple of months. Yes, I remind everyone we're in the Hall of Peace. Thank you very much for the presentation. I think part of my problem is, when did I hear about standardized grading coming into middle school? It was really my wife turning up to a meeting because I was stuck in a budget session with Paul and everyone else. So to me, it's relatively new. And from what I can sense, we have people who are just finding out about this now. No need to get a degree of comfort. I'm one of those parents I'm not in middle school. I'm in elementary school, moving up to middle school. Yes, I have reservations. Thank you for having these open sessions. It is very helpful. Coming back to the presentation last night, I do think communication, socialization, and really you have to alleviate some of those fears, because there are fears. We're human.
Yep.
We sometimes don't like change. There were some points made last night, and I think I'm a very numbers, detailed kind of guy. It's my history, it's my mindset, it's my gene, it's my DNA. What I would like is the comparison to peer schools. Last night I learned that Singapore and Jakarta actually do this, but they do it with grades. But the school has chosen not to do that. Okay? I did raise the question last night. The report card comes out 4 times a year. I see merit in having a report card 4 times a year, because I know after 1 quarter where my kid stands rather than halfway through. That's not really about standard-based grading, it's about frequency of reporting. There was a lady sitting just behind me right now who came from Cairo. I'm learning every day. She told me, I've been at Cairo. 4 years ago they implemented standard-based grading, but we did it similar to Singapore and Jakarta with the grades. I think what I really need to understand, I'm just reiterating what was said last night, out of the benchmarking schools, I need more knowledge, I need more comfort. I think that's what I'm looking for as a parent, not as a board member. I'm looking for that as a parent.
Karen?
Yeah, so I teach in the middle school. I'm a health teacher, 8th grade health teacher.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
So you don't agree with him, you don't like
What, I think you gave us great comments and feedback. I mean,
You gave us good comments and feedback.
I took that more as comments and feedback. I'm sorry.
It is.
because you're putting these questions on the.
And I think you made some good
To
points.
elaborate the examples that you are putting, yes, standard-based grading is happening. It's happening here too. Is this about the information that is provided? How it is transmitted to the parents?
Yes.
The idea is great, the philosophy is great. This happens in many countries by default. We like it. But the way you are transmitting the information to the parents and to the students is very confusing, because until now, one day I realized it's going to be proficiency, advanced, partially proficient. Another day is meet standard, doesn't meet standard. Nothing is defined.
So-
Everything is abstract.
Laura, I think I hear you loud and clear. And I would like to say, I think, we kind of made an assumption that some of this would be familiar for 5th grade parents because they are currently in a standard-based grading system, but that was a wrong assumption.
Oh, yeah,
and I
we realized that.
apologize for that. We do know we need to build our communication, build our comfort levels, increase, knowledge base. And there's a lot to get your heads around, and that's one of our number one tasks that's come through really loud and clear. And, you know, again, Stacey said earlier, you know, this really is a process of what fits well for your school. And so schools have made some choices based on their processes and their decisions. And we were sharing with you the decisions and processes that we had gone through. And so, but thank you, I appreciate the feedback. I didn't mean to, like, not respond to that. Karen?
So I just wanted to respond to, I think, one of the questions that you had about homework, where students are being held accountable. And at least from my teacher's perspective, this year has been one of the hardest because we've embraced a lot of these different assessment policies. That's been changes that have been made over the last couple of years, but we haven't got the reporting system to allow us to report those things. So, for example, 5 years ago in Health Aid, if you didn't turn in homework, 10% off every 2 days, and there was a penalty, which again, philosophically is problematic. At least I as a teacher agree that it's problematic to penalize the achievement grade based on work habits. But we don't have the ability to report out, aside from in the comment section, where a student is struggling in some of the behavior pieces. Next year, we'll be able to, when this is adopted, we'll be able to communicate those learning habits. This year, we didn't, we're kind of caught between one way of grading and one way of reporting. And it's been challenging from a teacher's perspective to kind of be in this in-between state. I don't know if that helps at all.
Yeah, I also have lots of questions, but the one that I keep thinking of while I listen to the presentation as well, I see that this is going to help the majority of the children, and it's going to help them bring the majority of the kids to the point where you want them to be, right? But I keep thinking of the other kids, the ones that are at the other end of the spectrum, the ones that are already meeting your standards, the ones that are past your target, your target knowledge, I think, because that's what we're going to focus on, right? Even the graphic showers, like this is a start, this is where we want all the kids to reach. And what happens if the kids are above that, when they're above that from the beginning of the year? Do you have the tools to test them and assess them throughout the year and push them above that? Especially because I can talk about 6th grade because that's where my kids going, and I know we're not going to have advancement classes in math or anything at all. So they don't have a passing class, they're not being tested. How are you going to push them and make them as competitive as they need to be when they move on to other schools?
One of our big learning pieces, and this has actually been going on for quite some time, especially in math, is the idea of the term differentiation. And that, really part of my job as a teacher and knowing that I have a wide range of learners in my class is to not really treat them all the same and identical, but to kind of look at what do you need if you're at the lower end of that spectrum, what are the scaffolding, the pieces of the support that you need to move along. But if you're at the upper end, how do I differentiate and give you work that's more challenging? Because there may be work that is at grade level, but there are things that we can do to challenge you at or beyond your grade level. And I know in math in particular, it's like richer problems, different kinds of problems. I know as a humanities teacher, you might move students off into some individualized learning. That well, if you've got this and you're already here, then let's look at what's the next step. And these things that we were talking about, this is where we get a little edu-speaky. We use these things called learning progressions that kind of here's the standard, and here's the building block to the standard, and then here's the next step. This is what going above and beyond looks like, and that's where you kind of go as a teacher to say, I've got a child that this isn't challenging for them, and so how do I create rich, meaningful tasks and activities for that child to enrich and deepen that experience? And it's through that concept of differentiation that we look at meeting those children's needs.
And I would say often that it's not that they come in knowing all of the standards that we have at that grade level, but they may get there quicker. So if they get there quicker, then what do we do? That's the differentiation piece. Because if a child has mastered all of those standards, math is probably the most tangible one to look at. You know, it's because it's quite scaffolded. And we can see from a history that their MAP scores show this. The beginning of your assessment shows this. Their end of your assessment shows that. Their grades show that. Then we have to, as a group and teachers, sit down and say, are they maybe placed right? You know, so those are the questions that we're really having. How do we really look at individual kids in individual ways? But, you know, in some classes, it's, you know, there's a great opportunity for differentiation. You know, and there's a lot of learning that they're not going to have mastered, but they might get there quicker than some other kids. We do know that. One last question, then if sensitive to the time, and then feel free to stay after if you want. And then on Friday we'll also do the question and answer.
Okay, I have lots of questions. I'm going to try and articulate them the right way. I'm thinking a little beyond. I have a middle schooler and I have a high schooler. So, do you know when you're going to be moving this system to the high school yet?
I think high school, I'm a high school teacher, actually. I'm high school and middle school, so I have a lot of experience in secondary. Where the high school is at right now, and I think it's a very appropriate place to be at, is they're having some of these conversations about assessment practices. Zeros, you know, kind of how, you know, grades is punishment, and, you know, how do we make our grades kind of represent learning in high school? They're having a lot of those assessment conversations. When standards-based grading and reporting has rolled out in high schools, and there are high schools doing this, it often looks different than it looks in middle school. We have not made a decision or a commitment to move our high school to standards-based grading and reporting. What we've made a commitment to is reflecting and thinking about our assessment practices. And I think that you can do a lot about assessment practices in a high school situation, and then you can stay in that traditional situation. But the high school, at this point this is not on the horizon for the high school. I will say, because, you know, obviously this is, you know, a piece of it is, you know, what do colleges think? And, you know, what we're finding out in many ways is that we as teachers, I'm saying we as teachers and we as people in schools, actually have a lot more anxiety about this than universities do. There's a report out there, you can Google it, it's just kind of a summary report called the Hanover Report, where they surveyed some of the top colleges in the United States and said, how would you handle a transcript like this? Do you have an issue of a transcript like this? And by and large, the feedback was, we see so much already that we have to really, you can't trust grades. What's in a grade? So they triangulate it between test scores, what's your IB scores, what are the challenging classes that you're taking, that the GPA in colleges is less and less relevant. So this survey of universities in the United States, by and large, said universities don't have a problem with this. I think we as high schools and as teachers and parents, that's a much bigger thing to get over.
But, you know, we really believe in developmentally that this is what fits a middle school child. And we've done not only a lot of learning about standards-based grading and reporting over the last couple years, but about assessments and about instructional practice and there's one other thing I was going to say, and about just the teenage brain and how is a child thinking, because their minds are changing so quickly. I mean, the synapses are just firing up there, like you can't believe it. If you look at your child, just how much they've physically grown in a year, think about that with brain development. You know, there's just a huge stage of change, and what's right for a kid in middle school is what we're doing, and to help them be the most collaborative and responsible and respectful and perseverant, because we know that's what companies and what other people want for them in the future, in whatever role they're going to have. So please feel free to stay after. Please feel free to post more questions if you have further questions. We're really looking to this information and value it. And thank you again for your lengthy amount of time with us today. And we'll be being creative about how we communicate to you better, because we know you can't always come. So how can we do that? We're already talking about we do flipped lessons for kids. Can
Flipped
we do
learning for
flipped learning for parents so that you can watch it on your own time? You know, what can we do? We know that we need to do more with the communication. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.